Kody Brown just got caught in one of his most bizarre lies yet, and the Special Forces cast is calling him out. Picture this: Kody's in New York doing press for the show, sitting down with Shawn Johnson, East, and Andrew East, probably feeling pretty good about himself with his fresh haircut that somehow looks worse than the disaster curls he had before. He's chatting away, trying to play it cool, when he drops an absolute bombshell. He tells them that his wife Robyn couldn't come to New York because if she did, she'd want to physically harm Brianna Chicken Fry. Yes, you heard that right, Robyn Brown, the woman who reads nuance differently than everyone else, who avoids conflict like it's the plague, who couldn't even make eye contact with Meri and Janelle at Coyote Pass, allegedly wanted to fight one of his fellow competitors. Now here's where it gets juicy. Shawn and Andrew aren't keeping this bombshell to themselves. They run into Brianna shortly after and they spill everything. Can you imagine Brianna's face when she hears this? She's standing there in New York, probably enjoying her post-show freedom, when she learns that according to Kody, Robyn Brown wants to take her down. The confusion must have been immediate. Brianna's sitting there thinking back to her time on Special Forces, trying to figure out what she possibly did to earn a threat from a woman she's never even met. And that's the thing that makes this whole story fall apart faster than Kody's wrestling career. Brianna wasn't even mean to Kody during filming. Sure, she called him creepy, but let's be honest, he earned that title fair and square with his behavior. But beyond that one accurate observation, Brianna actually advocated for gentle parenting when it came to dealing with Kody. She told the other contestants they needed to be nice to him, that he needed extra help. She wasn't out there launching attacks or making his life miserable. If anything, she was one of the more patient people dealing with his constant need for attention and validation. So why would Robyn want to harm her? The answer is simple and devastating: she wouldn't. Industry insiders are already speculating that Kody made the whole thing up. He fabricated this story, probably trying to make himself look important, trying to make it seem like he has this fierce, protective wife at home who's ready to defend his honor. He wanted Shawn and Andrew to think he's got this diesel jeans model wife, as he so cringely described Robyn, who's willing to throw down for him. But the reality? None of them watch Sister Wives. They had no idea who Robyn actually is. And once they do, this story's gonna look even more ridiculous than it already does. Let's rewind and talk about Kody's actual Special Forces experience, because understanding what really went down makes this lie even more pathetic. Kody walked onto that show thinking he was going to be recognized, thinking people would know who he was, thinking his reality TV fame would give him some kind of edge. Instead, he got a brutal reality check. Nobody knew who he was, not one single person. And for a man whose entire identity is wrapped up in being famous, being the patriarch of a polygamous family on television, that had to sting. He spent 2 weeks trying desperately to make friends, trying to fit in with people who were actual athletes, actual competitors, people who had real accomplishments beyond collecting wives and abandoning children. Shawn Johnson East is an Olympic gold medalist. Andrew East played professional football. These are legitimate athletes with legitimate credentials. And then there's Kody Brown, reality TV dad who can't even maintain relationships with his own kids, trying to hang with people who are out of his league in every possible way. The show was merciless to him. He got called creepy to his face, which again, completely deserved. He had what appeared to be toilet water dumped on him as punishment, though some viewers pointed out it was probably just pond water from Coyote Pass, which honestly isn't much better. He struggled through every single challenge, his body flailing around like one of those inflatable tube men you see at car dealerships. Every time he had to run somewhere, he'd stop on a dime and his momentum would carry his upper body forward in this awkward, uncoordinated mess. It was painful to watch, and everyone else was doing the exact same challenges with actual grace and athleticism. And his hair. Oh, his hair. By the end of the show, it was so rough that even Kody couldn't defend it anymore. For years, we've watched this man rock every terrible hairstyle imaginable, from the Back to the Future Doc Brown look to the long, stringy curls that made him look like he was auditioning for a tribute band. But something about seeing himself on Special Forces, seeing what normal people thought of his appearance, finally broke through his delusion. He cut it, not well, mind you. The new style still looks like he's got extensions clipped in and a weird, thick part in the back, but at least it's shorter. But here's what really matters. Kody was isolated on that show. He was the outsider, the one nobody connected with, the one who didn't belong. And in his desperation to be accepted, to be liked, to matter to these people, he started spinning stories. He needed Shawn and Andrew to think he was important, that he had this fierce wife at home, that people cared about him. So he lied. He made up a story about Robyn wanting to fight Brianna, probably thinking it made him sound like he had someone in his corner, someone willing to go to battle for him. Fast forward to the New York press junket, and the truth starts unraveling faster than Kody's credibility. Everyone who made it to the finals is gathering for interviews, doing the media rounds, celebrating making it through one of the toughest reality competitions on television. There's Shawn and Andrew, there's Gia, there's Randall Cobb, who Kody apparently called by the wrong name the entire time they lived together. These people spent intense days together, went through hell side by side, and now they're reconnecting in New York to relive the experience. Everyone's there except Kody. He's doing his own press separately, probably because the production schedule worked out that way, or maybe because nobody really wanted to hang out with him afterward. Either way, Brianna Chicken Fry runs into the rest of the group, and they're all catching up, swapping stories, talking about the experience. That's when Shawn and Andrew drop the bomb. They tell Brianna what Kody said, that his wife Robyn couldn't make the trip to New York because she'd want to physically harm Brianna. The confusion on Brianna's face must have been priceless. She's standing there trying to process this information, running through everything that happened during filming, trying to figure out what she possibly could have done to warrant a threat from a woman she's never met. And that's when it hits everyone in the group. This makes absolutely no sense. Brianna wasn't the villain of Kody's Special Forces story. She wasn't the one making his life miserable. She wasn't attacking him or sabotaging him or doing anything that would justify this supposed threat. In fact, when you look back at the footage, Brianna was actually one of the more reasonable people when it came to dealing with Kody. Yes, she made that comment about him being creepy, but that was an observation, not an attack. It was her being honest about the vibe he was giving off, and let's be real, she wasn't wrong. But beyond that moment, she was actually advocating for patience with him. She told the other contestants that they needed to practice gentle parenting with Kody, that he needed extra help, that they should be nice to him while he was there. That's not the behavior of someone who deserves to have threats made against them. That's someone who was trying to make the experience bearable for everyone, including Kody. She recognized that he was struggling, that he was out of his depth, and instead of piling on, she tried to create an environment where he could at least survive the experience. And this is how Kody repays that kindness, by telling people his wife wants to fight her. The whole group probably had the same thought. This doesn't track. None of them watch Sister Wives, so they don't know Robyn, but even without that context, the story doesn't make sense. Why would Robyn want to harm someone who was actually trying to help Kody? The answer is becoming clearer by the second. She wouldn't, because the story is complete fabrication. Let's break down exactly why this story is falling apart faster than Kody's relationships with his children. First, the timeline doesn't work. Kody's claiming Robyn wanted to come to New York but couldn't because she'd want to hurt Brianna. But why? What did Brianna actually do during filming that would justify this response? She called him creepy once. That's it. That's the grand offense that supposedly has Robyn ready to throw hands in Manhattan. Except here's the thing. Kody got called a lot worse than creepy during his time on Special Forces. He got told he was annoying. He got criticized for his performance. He got side-eyed for his weird behavior around the other contestants. If Robyn's supposedly ready to fight someone over calling Kody creepy, she'd need to take on half the cast and probably most of the production crew too. The math isn't mathing, as the kids say, but it gets better or worse depending on how you look at it. Brianna's the one who told everyone to use gentle parenting with Kody. She recognized that he needed extra help, that he was struggling, that he wasn't equipped to handle the intensity of the competition. So she advocated for patience and understanding. That's not villain behavior. That's someone trying to make a difficult situation more manageable for everyone involved, including the guy who's now claiming his wife wants to harm her. Sources close to the situation are already saying what we're all thinking. Kody made it up. He fabricated this entire story, probably in the moment, probably trying to seem important or interesting, or like he has this fierce, protective wife waiting at home. He knows none of these people watch Sister Wives. He knows they have no idea who Robyn actually is. So he can paint whatever picture he wants, create whatever narrative makes him look good, and hope nobody ever calls him on it. But here's where Kody's plan falls apart. Eventually, these people are going to watch an episode of Sister Wives. Eventually, they're going to see Robyn in action. And when they do, they're going to realize how absurd this claim really is. They're going to see a woman who couldn't even get out of her car first at Coyote Pass because she was too uncomfortable with potential confrontation. They're going to see someone who reads nuance differently than everyone else, which is code for making up problems that don't exist. They're going to see a woman whose idea of conflict is passive-aggressive comments and playing the victim. The idea that this woman would threaten physical violence against anyone, let alone someone she's never met, is laughable. Robyn's weapon of choice isn't her fists, it's manipulation and tears. She doesn't throw punches, she throws pity parties. The notion that she'd be ready to fight Brianna Chicken Fry in the streets of New York is so far removed from reality that it's genuinely stunning. Kody thought anyone would believe it. This lie fits perfectly into Kody's established pattern of manipulating narratives and rewriting history to make himself look better. For years, we've watched this man blame everyone else for his failures, twist stories to avoid accountability, and create false versions of events that paint him as the victim. The Robyn threat story is just the latest entry in a very long catalog of Kody Brown deceptions. Think about how he's rewritten the history of his marriages. He's claimed he was coerced into marrying Christine, as if he didn't actively pursue her and add her to the family. He said his wives forced him into polygamy, despite the fact that he's the one who chose this lifestyle and brought each woman into it. He's blamed Meri for their marriage falling apart, conveniently forgetting that he emotionally abandoned her years before the catfish incident. He's painted Janelle as difficult and uncooperative, ignoring the fact that she spent decades trying to make an impossible situation work. And then there's his favorite target, his own children. Kody spent an entire season claiming he reached out to every single one of his kids multiple times, that if they don't have relationships with him, it's because they're not reciprocating. But the evidence tells a completely different story. Gabe's birthday text was telling him to apologize to Robyn. Maddie got told to stop talking trash. Paydon said he hasn't spoken to his dad since Garrison's funeral. These aren't the actions of a man desperately trying to reconnect with his children. These are the actions of a man who wants credit for trying without actually putting in any real effort. Kody's entire existence is built on shifting blame and avoiding responsibility. When his marriages fell apart, it wasn't because he neglected 3 wives for one. When his kids stopped talking to him, it wasn't because he abandoned them emotionally and physically. When he failed at every challenge on special forces, it wasn't because he was unprepared and out of shape. Nothing is ever Kody's fault in Kody's mind. There's always someone else to blame, always another narrative to spin, always another lie to tell. So when he's sitting with Shawn and Andrew, feeling small and insignificant because nobody on Special Forces knew who he was, of course he makes up a story. Of course he invents this tale about Robyn being so fiercely protective that she'd want to physically harm someone over him. It makes him sound important. It makes him sound like he has someone in his corner who cares enough to fight for him. It makes him sound like he matters. The problem is that Kody's lies always catch up with him eventually. You can only manipulate the narrative for so long before people start comparing notes, before they start watching the actual footage, before they realize that the story he's telling doesn't match reality, and that's exactly what's happening here. The Special Forces cast is putting the pieces together, and the picture they're seeing is of a man so desperate for relevance that he'll say anything to feel important. Now let's talk about Robyn's actual role in all of this, because the idea of her making threats is so absurd it's almost funny. Reports from people who know the family paint a very clear picture. Robyn is conflict-averse to an almost comical degree. This is a woman who couldn't even say hello to Meri and Janelle at Coyote Pass because she doesn't like girl games and fakeness. Her solution to uncomfortable social situations isn't confrontation, it's avoidance. She stays in the car, she looks away, she pretends problems don't exist. We saw this play out in painful detail during that Coyote Pass standoff. Everyone's waiting in their cars for an hour because nobody wants to make the first move. When Justin finally shows up and people start getting out, Robyn's dilly-dallying, staying by the car door, pretending to look for something so she doesn't have to be the first one to interact with Meri and Janelle. She's purposely creating distance, making sure everyone else handles the awkward greetings before she has to participate. That's not the behavior of someone who's ready to fly to New York and fight people. Robyn's entire conflict resolution strategy is playing the victim and manipulating Kody into fighting her battles for her. She doesn't get her hands dirty. She cries to Kody about how the other wives are influencing the children against her. She complains about how nobody understands her, how she reads nuance differently, how everyone's being mean to her for no reason. Then Kody, being the loyal lapdog he is, goes out and does her dirty work. He's the one who confronts the kids. He's the one who demands apologies to Robyn. He's the one who cuts people off on her behalf. The whole dynamic is Robyn sitting back playing innocent while Kody destroys his relationships with everyone else to protect her feelings. She's not a fighter, she's a manipulator. She's someone who's convinced Kody that she's incapable of being wrong, that her way of thinking is on some higher level than everyone else, that any problems in the family are because other people are jealous or plotting against her. She's weaponized Kody's loyalty and his desperate need to be the hero, and she uses it to isolate him further from anyone who might challenge their toxic dynamic. So the notion that this woman would threaten physical violence is ridiculous. Robyn doesn't throw punches. She doesn't make direct threats. Her style is much more insidious. She's the type to poison someone's reputation slowly over time, to plant seeds of doubt in Kody's mind about everyone else, to rewrite history so she's always the victim and everyone else is always the villain. She's not gonna fight Brianna Chicken Fry in the streets of Manhattan. She's gonna sit at home, cry to Kody about how attacked she feels, and let him make up stories about her being some kind of fierce protector when the reality is she's just manipulative and passive-aggressive. So why did Kody lie? What was going through his head when he decided to fabricate this entire story about Robyn wanting to harm Brianna? The answer reveals everything about how desperate and pathetic he's become. Kody was trying to impress Shawn and Andrew. He was trying to make himself seem important, relevant, like he has this fierce, protective partner at home who's ready to defend his honor. He wanted them to think he's got this amazing wife who cares so much about him that she'd fly to New York and throw down over someone calling him creepy. Remember, Kody spent 2 weeks on Special Forces, being the outsider. Nobody knew who he was. Nobody cared about his reality TV fame. He was just this weird guy with terrible hair who couldn't keep up with the challenges and made everyone uncomfortable with his desperate attempts to fit in. That had to hurt. His entire identity is wrapped up in being famous, being the patriarch, being someone who matters. And on that show, he was nobody. So when he's sitting with Shawn and Andrew doing press, probably feeling the sting of being excluded from the group reunion, he needs to say something that makes him sound important. He needs to create this image of himself as someone who has people in his corner, someone who's loved and protected, someone who matters enough that his wife would get violent on his behalf. It's pathetic, but it's also very revealing about what's going on in Kody's head. And here's where it gets even more cringeworthy. Kody described Robyn to them as his Diesel Jeans model wife. Diesel Jeans model wife. Let that sink in for a moment. He's trying so hard to make Robyn sound attractive and intimidating and cool that he's invoking diesel jeans. Like that's the height of fashion and toughness. Like Shawn and Andrew are supposed to be impressed that his wife allegedly modeled for a clothing brand at some point. The secondhand embarrassment is overwhelming. But this is classic Kody. He's always trying to hype Robyn up, always trying to make her sound more impressive than she actually is. He's the one who's constantly talking about how she reads nuance differently, how she's so special and unique, how she's above the petty concerns of normal people. He's built her up in his mind as this perfect woman, and he needs everyone else to see her that way too. So he invents stories about her being willing to fight people, about her being this fierce protector, about her being someone who commands respect and maybe even fear. The reality check is coming though. Once Shawn, Andrew, and the rest of the cast actually watch Sister Wives, once they see who Robyn really is, this story is going to look even more absurd. They're going to see a woman who can barely function in mildly uncomfortable social situations. They're going to see someone whose idea of standing up for herself is crying and playing the victim, and they're going to realize that Kody lied to them. The fallout from this lie is already starting, and it's only going to get worse for Kody as more people learn the truth. Word is spreading among the Special Forces cast about what really went down, and once people start comparing notes and watching actual footage from Sister Wives, Kody's credibility is taking yet another massive hit. These aren't people who are invested in protecting his image or giving him the benefit of the doubt. They spent 2 weeks watching him struggle, listening to his constant need for attention, dealing with his awkward attempts to bond. They already had questions about him, now they're getting answers, and those answers paint a picture of a man who will say absolutely anything to make himself look better. Shawn and Andrew recounted what Kody told them, and they didn't add their own spin to it. They didn't lie or exaggerate. They simply repeated what Kody said to them, which means the responsibility for this fabrication lies entirely at his feet. He's the one who created this narrative. He's the one who told them Robyn wanted to harm Brianna. He's the one who now has to own the consequences of that lie. And those consequences are significant, because now everyone who was on that show knows that Kody is willing to make up stories about his own wife to impress people. They know he'll fabricate threats and drama where none exists. They know he's not trustworthy. That's a reputation that's incredibly hard to shake, especially when you're someone who's already on thin ice with public perception. Kody's already dealing with the fallout from his treatment of his children, from his obvious favoritism toward Robyn, from his complete inability to take accountability for anything. Now he can add compulsive liar to the list. But here's what makes this even more damaging. Eventually, the cast members are going to watch Sister Wives. They're going to see Robyn in action. They're going to witness her inability to handle even the mildest conflict, her tendency to play the victim, her passive-aggressive manipulation tactics. They're going to see her at Coyote Pass, unable to even make eye contact with Meri and Janelle, hiding by her car car door, waiting for everyone else to do the hard work of social interaction. They're going to see a woman who is the complete opposite of someone who would threaten violence. And when that happens, when they realize just how absurd Kody's claim really was, his credibility will be completely shot. Nobody's going to believe anything he says after that. Every story he tells will be questioned. Every claim he makes will be scrutinized, because if he's willing to lie about something this bizarre and easily disprovable, what else has he lied about? What other stories has he spun to make himself look better or more important or more sympathetic? The Special Forces experience was supposed to be Kody's moment to shine outside the Sister Wives bubble. Instead, it's become another example of him sabotaging himself with his desperate need for validation and his complete inability to tell the truth. This lie about Robyn threatening Brianna reveals something much bigger and more disturbing about how Kody operates. If he's willing to fabricate a story about his wife wanting to commit violence against someone, what else has he lied about over the years? What other narratives has he manipulated? What other stories has he twisted to make himself look better while throwing everyone else under the bus? The implications are staggering when you really think about it. For years, we've watched Kody tell his version of events on Sister Wives, and we've had to take him at his word for a lot of it. Sure, we could see his behavior on camera. We could watch him neglect 3 wives for one. We could witness him abandoning his children emotionally and physically. But there were always conversations that happened off camera, always private moments we didn't see, always his explanations for why things went wrong. And now we have to wonder how much of that was true. When Kody claims he reached out to his kids multiple times, is that real? Or is it like the Robyn story where he's exaggerating or outright inventing things to make himself look better? When he says his ex-wives turned the children against him, is that what actually happened? Or is that another convenient lie that shifts blame away from his own terrible parenting? When he talks about how much he tried to make his marriages work, how much effort he put in, how much he sacrificed for the family, are any of those claims based in reality? The pattern of manipulation and blame shifting is undeniable. Kody has spent 20 seasons of television telling us that nothing is ever his fault. His marriages failed because his wives were difficult. His children don't speak to him because they've been influenced. His life fell apart because everyone else made bad choices. He's always the victim, always the one who tried his hardest, always the one who got a raw deal despite giving everyone 110%. But if he'll lie about Robyn wanting to fight someone she's never met, if he'll fabricate threats and drama to impress people he barely knows, then we have to question everything else he's ever said. The foundation of his entire narrative is crumbling. Every excuse he's ever made, every justification he's ever offered, every time he's played the victim, we now have to look at with fresh eyes and ask, is this real? Or is this another Kody Brown fabrication? And here's what makes this particularly damning. This lie serves no real purpose except to make him feel important. It doesn't protect him from anything. It doesn't save his reputation. It doesn't help his relationships with his kids or his ex-wives. It's purely about his ego, about his desperate need to seem relevant and important, and like he has people who care about him enough to fight for him. He invented an entire scenario just to feel like he matters. That's not normal behavior. That's the behavior of someone who's so disconnected from reality that he can't even see how his lies hurt him in the long run. The Special Forces experience stripped away all of Kody's carefully constructed facades and showed us exactly who he really is when he can't control the narrative. For 20 seasons, he's had the benefit of friendly editing, of producers who need him for the show to exist, of a platform where he can spin his version of events without immediate pushback. But Special Forces was different. He was just another contestant, subject to the same rules as everyone else with no special treatment and no ability to manipulate how he was portrayed. And what did we see? We saw a man who was completely out of his depth, desperately trying to make friends with people who had no interest in befriending him. We saw someone whose physical fitness was so poor he could barely complete basic challenges. We saw hair that was so damaged and unkempt that even Kody finally admitted he needed to cut it. We saw someone who made people so uncomfortable that they called him creepy to his face. We saw a man who was so irrelevant that nobody even knew who he was walking in. That experience had to be humbling, or at least it should have been. But instead of learning from it, instead of taking a hard look at himself and maybe growing as a person, Kody did what he always does. He started making up stories. He started creating narratives that made him sound more important than he actually is. He invented this tale about Robyn being ready to fight people on his behalf because he couldn't stand the reality. Nobody cares about him the way he thinks they should. Brianna Chicken Fry deserves credit for how this all came to light. She went from someone someone I didn't particularly like during the show to someone I'd absolutely defend now. She handled Kody with more patience than he deserved. She advocated for treating him with kindness even when he was being annoying and uncomfortable to be around. And when she learned about his lie, when she discovered that he'd fabricated this story about Robyn wanting to harm her, she didn't stay quiet about it. She exposed it. She let people know what Kody said, and in doing so, she revealed yet another layer of his deception. The truth always comes out eventually. Kody can spin his narratives and manipulate his stories and play the victim all he wants. But at some point, people start comparing notes, they start watching the footage, they start realizing that what he's telling them doesn't match reality. And that's exactly what's happening now with the Special Forces cast. They're piecing together the real story, and it's nothing like what Kody wanted them to believe. So here's where we are. Kody Brown, desperate for relevance and validation, made up a story about his wife threatening violence against someone who was actually kind to him. The lie is exposed, his credibility is shot, and once again, he's proven that he's his own worst enemy. The next video is waiting, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Drop your thoughts below, hit subscribe, and let's see what other lies Kody's been telling.